Revenge films.
My name is Sarah. I lived with my husband, Michael, and our newborn baby, Hannah. My husband works at the company where his father is a director, so his salary is steady, and for that reason, I'm able to focus on raising my baby while being a full-time housewife. Everyone around me often said I had a good life and that they were jealous, and they all thought my life was smooth sailing. However, there was something really troubling me. My husband was always a mama's boy, but even after our daughter was born, he didn't seem interested in her at all, and he wasn't very helpful with raising her. On his day off, he would often go back to his parents' home alone, and he would never try to make time for us. Most days, I always was left alone with my daughter. Good morning, it's already past noon.
I'm exhausted from work. At least let me sleep in on my days off.
You're right. What do you want for lunch?
Once I get dressed, I'm going to go straight to my parents' place. I'm gonna stay the night there, so I don't need dinner either.
Again? But last week and the week before, you did the same thing. Why don't you stay at home sometimes?
My mom is all alone. Don't you feel bad for her?
Well then, why can't you take me and Hannah with you sometimes? You could spend some time with us too, you know?
Impossible. If Hannah is there, then I can't relax and talk to my mom, can I? Plus, my mom said that unless my dad is around, you and Hannah are a burden. So she told me not to bring you.
A burden?
Well then, I'm gonna go.
Michael thinks that his mother is more important than his daughter. And his mom also thinks that her son is cuter than her grandchild. So to the two of them, my daughter and I were simply in the way. The one person who would take my side in all of this was my father-in-law. Knowing that he was too much of a mama's boy, he often scolded my husband to take responsibility and be more thoughtful of his wife and daughter. That's why both my husband and my mother-in-law would be nice to me and my daughter whenever he was around. However, my father-in-law was living out of town on a long-term transfer assignment, so he would only be back every so often. That was perfect for Michael and his mom to do as they pleased without him. I was feeling uneasy about my life like this, when one day a typhoon came close to our region. It looks like a typhoon is coming. We should start preparing for it before it's too late.
I wonder if my mom is okay. I'm gonna go check on her.
Even though there was a major typhoon coming, my husband didn't seem worried in the slightest about me or my daughter, and he ran off to his parents' home. When he finally got back, he immediately started packing. What are you doing?
In the worst case scenario, I need to protect my mom. So I am gathering my things to go stay over there.
What about me and Hannah?
My mom says it's too noisy with Hannah around, so she told me to leave her here. Anyway, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Do you really think that's okay to say? You don't care what happens to me or Hannah?
Obviously, at times like this, I'm gonna want to protect my mom over you guys. Don't get it twisted.
His words were so straightforward and harsh that I was at a loss for what to say back. While this was happening inside of the house, outside the rain was getting stronger, and there was a flood warning announced. On top of that, because of the heavy rainfall, the river had overflowed, and there was an order for evacuation. The rain was so aggressive that the town was instantly flooded, and we were running out of time to get away before we would be in serious danger. I grabbed my daughter in my hands as I also grabbed the bag I prepared and ran outside. The street around us was heavily congested with cars heading towards the evacuation site. The water was already at my ankles, and if the water levels were to go any higher, the cars would stop running too. Between the painful drops of rain and the commotion outside, my daughter woke up and started crying. Don't worry, Hannah! Your mommy will protect you! No matter what, I knew I couldn't lose my newborn baby to a disaster like this. So I held her as tight as I could when we went towards our car. We need to hurry and get out. Please, put Hannah in the car.
I'm getting the car out now, so move!
As I was holding the baby and my husband was getting in the car, he said something that made me question my own hearing.
Hey, what are you doing trying to get on? I'm going to save my mom, so what are you doing?
What do you mean? There's plenty of space for us to get on too.
If you guys get on, then where am I supposed to put my mom's stuff? It's not going to fit!
Even as we were arguing, the flooding water was getting closer and closer to our house. I was getting desperate and begged my husband, please, even if it's just Hannah, let her on!
My mom is more important! If I get stuck in traffic, I'm gonna be late to pick her up! I don't have time to be entertaining you two!
He jumped in and started the engine. And I couldn't even chase after him as my husband drove off and left us standing in the rain. Until now, I was already fed up with my husband, who was always prioritizing his mother. I realized that my life and my daughter's life had been absolutely nothing to my husband. I was filled with rage. As I felt our lives in danger and felt completely hopeless, I was crying in front of our house when one car drove up and stopped in front of us. Driving it was my father-in-law.
Sarah! Hannah! Thank goodness you're okay! Forget your stuff! Just hurry up and get in!
Sir! The moment I saw my father-in-law's face, I was so relieved that I started crying uncontrollably. Apparently, he had seen the news about the typhoon, and because he was so worried, he came running back on emergency leave for his assignment. When we finally arrived at the evacuation site in the safe location, my father-in-law finally asked why my husband wasn't there. Then, through my tears, explained everything that had happened that day to him. Upon hearing this, my father-in-law was livid towards his son and his wife. I went on to tell him everything they had said and done until then, to which he was mortified.
Sarah, I'm so very sorry for all this. If only I had realized, you wouldn't have had to suffer this much.
That was to divorce my husband. After this incident, the word divorce had been floating in my mind, so it didn't take long for me to accept my father-in-law's suggestion. Right around that time, my husband and my mother-in-law were heading towards the evacuation site on the opposite side of town from us. However, because the area was already flooded, my father-in-law received a message from them that they weren't able to move anywhere because they drove in a flooded area. The car broke down and wasn't moving either, and their lower bodies were completely submerged in water as they were waiting to be rescued. But when my father-in-law heard this, he said that it was their own doing and hung up the phone. After the typhoon, before heading back home, my father-in-law brought me back to their house with him. When we arrived, my husband and my mother-in-law opened the door and innocently welcomed us as if nothing had happened. Honey, you are with Sarah and Hannah after all? I guess you all found each other at the evacuation site? I was so worried about you. Where were you?
Sarah! Hannah! Ever since we got separated during evacuation, I've been looking for you guys this whole time!
Got separated during the evacuation? When I said that, my husband glared at me. I knew he was trying to stop me from saying what really happened, but this was after I had already told my father-in-law everything, so his intense eye contact was meaningless.
Oh, did you think that I don't know what's going on here?
What?
After Michael left Sarah and Hannah for dead, I immediately went to go pick them up, and when I got there, I found Sarah crying in front of the house while holding on to Hannah for dear life, and she told me everything. Anyone who's gonna leave my daughter and my grandchild like that is getting a divorce. Get out of this house! Now!
Divorce? No, wait, honey, please wait! Having the word divorce suddenly thrown onto her, my mother-in-law went into a panic and tried to come up with multiple meaningless excuses. Of course my mother-in-law was having none of it, and he physically kicked my husband and his wife out of the house. My house was completely flooded in the typhoon, so my father-in-law drove Hannah and me back to my parents' house in the next state. Unable to live in his own house and getting kicked out of his parents' house as well, my husband had nowhere to go and called me multiple times. In the beginning, he was bold and said that he wanted to stay at my family's house for whatever reason. But as soon as I told him my intention of getting a divorce, his attitude changed completely. He must have not expected me to ever say the word divorce, so my husband got scared and tried to apologize over and over again. I had had enough, so I stopped answering their phone calls and decided to start preparing for the divorce. When I told my father-in-law of my decision, he fully supported me. Thanks to that, I was able to receive a settlement fee out of my husband for the emotional abuse. On top of that, due to his father, he was fired from his company, so my husband lost his salary, his house, his assets, and his family all at once. After that, in order to pay child support fees, my ex-husband got a part-time job, and I heard that now, him and his mother are having to work multiple jobs in order to survive in a rundown apartment. In the beginning, the child support fees would come in late, but every time that happened, my father-in-law would make a threatening phone call, and my husband was never to be late on his payments again. I moved back in with my parents, and with their support as well as the settlement fee and child support fees I received in the divorce, I am able to relax and focus all of my time and energy on Hannah. for Hannah as well. Instead of living with her father, who didn't show any signs of love towards her, there's no doubt that she's happier living with my dad and mom, who are head over heels for her. After truly fearing for my life in the disaster, I vowed to protect Hannah for the rest of my life, and I am confident that I will be able to stay strong for her as a single mother.
My name is Adam, and I'm working as a trainee at a sushi restaurant. Work is a handful. From morning until night, I work as an apprentice in the restaurant. In the moments in between, I learned how to prepare the sushi. It was hard work, but I loved it. I enjoyed getting to refine my skill. I was lucky that everyone around me was great. The head chef was a strict man, but he took great care of me. All of my senior colleagues were really good to me too. Adam, start your closing duties now. Yes, chef, I'm on it. The head chef took his work very seriously. He was very old school and extremely scary. However, he was always mindful of the trainees and gave us free staff meals or hand us leftovers to take home. This head chef never spoke about himself. None of the other chefs had heard any stories from him about his past either. But between the employees, there was a lot of rumors. Some say he had a pretty dark past, or that he used to be a CEO and a business owner, but that he left the company in someone else's hands, and that he's currently working as a sushi chef. There are all kinds of theories. Eventually, I earned my place as a sushi chef under him, and 10 years flew by. Then one day, I'm sorry. It looks like I've done my back in and I won't be able to come in today. I'm going to need you to look after the restaurant, Adam. Yes, chef. You can leave it to me. The head chef had hurt his back, and I was left having to open up the restaurant myself. Even though I started as a trainee, I had been working at the restaurant for 10 years already. And I had gained the head chef's trust both as a sushi chef and as a person. So he left the restaurant in my hands for 3 weeks. Working with my cooks and my junior colleagues, we were doing just fine and the restaurant was going smoothly. Until the day before the head chef was going to come back. Interesting. So this is the famous sushi spot. Welcome! A blonde man who didn't quite look like he fit in our restaurant walked in. His clothes were very casual and flashy. He was acting strangely and it made me uneasy. However, it's not good to judge people by their looks. So I treated him just like I would any other customer. But, whoa, hey! What the hell is going on here? Is something the matter, sir? When I handed that guy his plate of sushi, he seemed to take notice of something and started raising his voice. All the customers around us looked scared too. I went over and immediately asked what happened, and he started claiming that there was a hair in the sushi. When I went to confirm, there was in fact a piece of hair wrapped into the sushi. What is this about? How can you serve something like this to a customer? I'm very sorry about this. I apologized to start and went to confirm the piece of hair that he claimed was in his sushi. I noticed something very strange. The hair that he claimed was in his sushi was bright blonde. Given that our restaurant was a high-end sushi destination, and with the pride that our head chef took in tradition, it was forbidden for any employees to have their hair dyed. We didn't have a single blonde person in the staff, and looking around the restaurant, not one customer had blonde hair either, except for the person sitting right in front of me. I'm very sorry, sir, but could there be a possibility that this strand of hair is your hair? At our restaurant, we don't have any members of the staff with blonde hair. Huh? Are you telling me that I'm lying? The guy raised his voice even more and started causing a commotion. Little by little, the customers around started to take notice and looked uncomfortable. If I let things continue going like this, it would inconvenience the other customers in the restaurant. So I did my best to calm him down. However, his actions only started to escalate from there. Sir, please, calm down. Calm down? That's enough already! I have friends in the gangs! If you're not gonna compensate me for this, I'm gonna ask those guys to head straight here! He tried to threaten me like that. Friends in the gangs. Is that the truth? Regardless, this was only going to bother the other customers at this rate, and I couldn't let our customers' impression or ratings go down. I didn't know what to do, so I asked the rowdy customers to wait one moment as I escaped to the back. Hey! Stop hiding like a little kid! Hurry up and show yourself! The guy was yelling loudly, but I did my best to ignore him as I picked up the phone and called a certain person. I'm very sorry to bother you. Is this Mr. Jefferson? Yo, Adam! What's the matter? The person I called was Mr. Jefferson. the head chef's good friend of many, many years. When I explained the current situation at the restaurant to him, he said he would head straight over and hung up the phone. Hey! How long you gonna make your customer wait? I'm very sorry. I apologize and I let the guy say whatever he wanted to say. His objective was to collect the compensation of damages from us. Because we served such an unsanitary thing to him, he demanded that we pay him $10,000. There was no way we were gonna pay that, or that we could pay that anyway. Not to mention that the hair was clearly his own. If I caved to a guy like this, the head chef would never forgive me, so I stood my ground. No matter what he said or what he might do, I didn't back down and continue to repeat, please wait one moment. Come on, say something! The guy started to get irritated and began throwing cutlery and plates at me. At this point, all the customers had fled the restaurant, and all that was left inside were this guy and my employees. I didn't want to put anyone else in danger, so I told all my cooks and junior colleagues to go to the back room and stay there. You really pissed me off. I'm just gonna call my friend in the revenge gang now. All you had to do was pay up, and none of this would have happened. He stood up and kicked the restaurant chair. All I could do was pray that Mr. Jefferson would arrive soon, as I did my best to keep the man inside of the restaurant. About 15 minutes after I made the phone call, a black car stopped right outside of the restaurant. The person I had called had arrived, along with some of his henchmen. Hey, you! Long time no see. What? What? Who the hell are you? With a huge grin on his face, Mr. Jefferson put his arm around the panicked guy and started talking. That's right, this Mr. Jefferson was an active gangster and was actually the chief of the revenge gang. If this guy actually did know somebody in the revenge gang, then there was no way that he wouldn't know who Mr. Jefferson was. That's when I knew this guy was spitting nonsense. It's me! Don't you remember me? Been a while, hasn't it? And you know it's wrong to be causing trouble at a restaurant? The moment the guy saw Mr. Jefferson and his henchmen, he must have quickly understood the situation he was in. Mr. Jefferson was grinning from ear to ear, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. And from under the sleeves of the henchmen that were standing behind Mr. Jefferson, you could see the tattoos down to their wrists. Seeing real gangsters in front of him, the guy looked like he was about to cry. He suddenly started apologizing and begging me for help. I'm sorry! I got carried away! What are you saying now? Well, why don't we get going? Help me! What? But didn't you say that you know them? They came to pick you up, isn't that right? No! He could barely get no out of his mouth with the tears in his eyes. Mr. Jefferson maintained the cold grin on his face as he dragged him out of the restaurant and put him in his black car. After that, I could hear the guy crying out for help outside as I heard the car drive off somewhere. I don't know what exactly happened to him, but a few days later, he came back to the restaurant with his hair shaved off and his body covered in bandages to apologize. I'm very sorry for what I did. With tears in his eyes once again, he got down on his knees to apologize. He handed me the money to pay for everything that he ate as well as everything that he damaged. Who knows what they did to him? I can only imagine he saw his life flash before his eyes. As it turns out, he was a repeat scammer who was going around to a lot of high-end restaurants and using different tactics in order to force them to pay the cost of damages to him. I never would have imagined he would come to our restaurant, though. Thank you very much for your help the other day, Mr. Jefferson. Don't even mention it. It was nothing.
Can't believe that's what happened while I was away.
The head chef made a full recovery and came back to the restaurant shortly after. Today, to celebrate his return, the head chef and myself, along with Mr. Jefferson, were drinking at the restaurant after we closed. Mr. Jefferson had been coming to the restaurant since the days when I was still a trainee. As it turns out, the head chef used to be a gangster himself, and he and Mr. Jefferson were like brothers back in the day. Because Mr. Jefferson knew me since I was a young trainee, and he knew how much the head chef cared about me, he always looked after me as well. That's why he had given me his personal contact information in case anything were to happen. It really came in handy this time. Hey, yeah! Do you have any plans on opening your own place? I love this restaurant, and plus, until the head chef retires, I would be too worried about this place and wouldn't be able to sleep.
Huh, you idiot!
Despite his words, I could see the head chef blushing a little bit. However, I meant every word, and I truly love this restaurant. I would someday love to have my own place, but not until after the head chef retired. Well then, when Adams opens his own place, I'll be the very first customer.
Hey, wait a second! As his mentor, that should be my right!
Why don't you guys just come together? That is my dream. That someday, the two of them would come to my restaurant and eat the sushi that I carefully prepare for them.
I was living in an apartment building and working hard at my job, and one day a crazy misunderstanding put me in a terrible situation. That day, I finished work as usual and headed home, and I pressed the elevator button in my apartment building. Then, the elevator came down and the doors opened. That's when it all started. A few guys were in the elevator, and as soon as they saw me,
You damn stalker!
there was nobody else around me, and all the men surrounded me. For what it's worth, I had never seen these guys before and had no recollection of ever meeting them. Then, all of a sudden, I was tackled to the ground, and just as I thought that this was some bad joke, they started punching me with full strength multiple times to the face. I was shocked. I had never been slapped in the face by anyone in my life, but the shock of when I was punched in the face with a full fist wasn't even a matter of pain. It was like a cartoon where everything in front of me was flashing and spinning. For a while, I laid on the ground and wasn't able to get up. By the time I came to, my mouth was full of the taste of blood that I had never tasted before, and I felt a chill underneath my nose and realized that my nose was bleeding. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening to me at all, and I was full of fear and confusion. I had no idea what was going on or how the situation happened, but in my broken state, I was shoved to the police. Then, for the first time, the guy spoke up.
This disgusting woman has been stalking me for a long time! Finally caught her! So you can arrest her now!
I overheard him explain the situation, and I realized that I was being mistaken for a stalker. No, this is crazy! I haven't been stalking anyone. This must be some kind of misunderstanding, I said as tears streamed down my face. I'd never seen these people before in my life, but due to their misunderstanding, my face was punched over and over again, and I experienced a fear like never before. On top of that, when I heard that I might be arrested, I was so scared that I didn't know what to do.
Huh? Stop messing around, you stalker!
I've never stalked anyone in my life. I was desperately speaking through my tears while the guys glared at me, and the police looked back and forth between the two of us.
Why don't we hear both sides of your stories?
They said, according to the guy, he and I were coming home at the same time, and apparently we were often in the elevator together. I am a regular office employee, and I leave my uniform in my work locker. Then, I would just get home just past 6 p.m. This was my daily routine. Every Sunday, I would do all my grocery shopping in one big load, and I would only buy things on the way home that I forgot, so most days, I would be at the apartment elevators right around the same time. At the same time, the guy who thought he was being stalked by me was a college student. His first class would start at 8:50 a.m., and his fifth class would end around 5:50 p.m. The apartment building was near his university, so he would walk home and get back just past 6 p.m. every day, and often run into me by the elevators. According to him, he was completely under the impression that I was a stalker and I was trespassing into the apartment building. He spoke about this to his friends, and after some planning, they surrounded me and made sure that I couldn't move before calling the police. But I was also a former student and graduate of that college, and ever since I was a student there, I've been living in that apartment building. I always really liked that area, so even after graduating, I only looked for jobs that were close to that apartment building. While bearing the pain that was searing on my face, I carefully explained everything to the police. I even called my office and had them explain the situation to them, in order for them to confirm that the time I leave work to the police. On top of that, we contacted the landlord of the apartment for evidence that I had been a resident of the apartment building on the top floors for years. I explained that I was only pressing the elevator button in order to go back to my own home. And I even explained that I was engaged with a fiancé.
This is all a lie! I've never seen a guy like that anywhere near here! She's just lying in order to hide her crimes!
The guy who beat me up said that, but it's true that he works a lot later, so we almost never go up to the apartment together. But he still often comes over to my place. If necessary, then you're welcome to take fingerprints right now and whatever you need. I'm sure you'll find his fingerprints are everywhere. Plus, I'm happy to call him or his parents right here, right now, in order to clarify. When I said that, the police decided to call him, and my fiancé was quick to confirm. My fiancé and I were planning on having our wedding soon, and with both of our stories lining up, it was proved that this was all this guy's misunderstanding and I was innocent. He was completely convinced that I was his stalker, so he must not have been happy with the results as he kept insisting.
This is all wrong! This woman is lying through her teeth!
Now he was the one sounding desperate. But it was my turn now. This stalker-claiming guy and all his friends' parents all came to apologize to me. But I later found out that when I was tackled and fell to the ground, I had broken the bones on my wrist. Of course, it was going to affect my work, but my wedding was also planned within the time that I would take to heal. And with all of these hindrances combined, both my parents and fiance's parents went after him with full force and sued him for the high amount. For a brief moment, we considered postponing the wedding to a later date, but we had already set out all of the invitations to everyone and secured the venue, so that wasn't going to be possible. But if that were to happen, it would mean that this guy was responsible for all of the cancellation fees, and I'm sure he would have had to pay even more. The group of guys all realized that this was their other friend's misunderstanding and had gone completely pale. All of their parents were now all left to pay a large settlement fee and cost of damages to me. On top of that, with my wrist being broken, I wasn't able to go to work for 1 month, so that was added in an additional cost of damages. More than anybody, my fiancé was furious, and even though the guy was still in college and a minor, after seeing my battered and bruised face, he showed no mercy going after him. My fiancé went to their university and reported that their students had surrounded me and tackled me to the floor before beating me up. He took a photo of my face as well as the medical reports as evidence, and although they were all graduating next year, they were all expelled from the university. The university must have realized that there was no way to defend a group of guys who were ganging up on a woman like that and get caught by the police. Even when the police first arrived and saw the situation, the first thing they said was,
"Why did you hit her this much?"
as they looked at my face in shock. That's why when they realized I was a completely unrelated person and innocent, they glared coldly towards the group of guys.
Even if she was a stalker, she's still one woman against the 4 of you grown boys. To approach her and beat her up like this without any proof whatsoever, you do realize that now you guys have become the criminals and will be charged for assault.
The fact that they chose to be violent towards me before consulting the police about the situation first became a major problem. The 3 guys' friends tried to say,
"He told us that he was being stalked, so we just came here to help him. But he's the one that planned and did everything."
and they were trying to claim their innocence, but there were 4 of them and 1 of me, and not one person thought it was wrong to beat me up without any evidence. They may be college students, but they were adults, and I was disappointed that they couldn't tell the fundamental wrong from right. In the end, in addition for being expelled from university, I heard that the guys and their families all fled the town. That's because it became quite the news around the town and everybody found out about it. Apparently, the residents from a nearby apartment had all heard the commotion and took a video of the whole thing. At the time, the resident also thought that I was a stalker, but after finding out that I was a completely innocent person, she explained everything carefully as she posted it on social media, and the mass media jumped onto it. My name wasn't revealed, but anybody in that town would be able to recognize the apartment from the video. And especially since I had my wedding coming up, a lot of people came to ask me about my wrist injury and about the incident, and I was happy to tell them. It didn't really take long for everybody to hear about it. I don't know whose mother it was, but apparently the police had showed her the photo of my face and what her son had done to me, and she came crying to my door.
I am truly sorry about this. Truly, truly. How could I apologize enough?
She was down on her knees and sobbing. Well, after getting punched in the face with a full fist by a grown man, of course my face would swell up and change color too. It didn't take us long for my wrist to heal, but for a while, the swelling in my face wouldn't go down. And both my parents and my fiance's parents were worried about the wedding and crying for my sake. The university that the boys were attending was a pretty good university with a national reputation and a promise for a good future. But of course, they lost everything. Luckily for them, they weren't sent to prison, but they now had a criminal record, and I can only imagine that they'll face some difficulties in the future. I don't have any sympathy for them, though. As for my wedding, of course, I invited my colleagues as well as my bosses, and they were all planning on attending. So everyone at work also found out about this incident, and it became a big deal. They were sincerely worried whether I'd be able to have a wedding. That's why one of my colleagues and bosses contacted me.
You don't need to worry about work. Just leave it all to us.
Take it easy and take care of yourself. Your well-being is the most important.
Thanks to their kindness, I was able to fully focus on my recovery. As a result, my wrist healed a lot faster than expected, and I was able to wear my wedding dress without worrying about a cast. After getting married, I moved out of the apartment that the incident happened in. but to this day, I think back to that terrifying experience. I married my husband after 3 years of dating. My husband grew up in a single-parent household, so before we got married, I went to go meet his mother. However, the first words out of her mouth were,
Why on earth are you marrying someone this ugly? Surely you could find a better woman than this.
I was shocked. Of course, at the time, my husband immediately responded,
What are you saying? I didn't bring Amy here today to be spoken like that. Apologize to her, Mom!
She gave me an insincere apology. But ever since that moment, I wasn't very fond of my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's house and our house weren't too far from each other's, and quite close. And one day, there was a disaster-level storm in our state. Her house wasn't worn down, but it was quite old, and the house was damaged with flooding and holes in the walls and in the floor, and it became unlivable. We thought she would find a new house soon, but no matter how many places my husband found for her, she would find some reason why she didn't like it and turn them all down. Throughout this process, we had no choice but to let her stay at her house, but then she said,
Why don't I just stay here? I can just live here and that solves it. And we were stuck with her.
Of course, my husband tried to say,
No! We're gonna find a house for you, so please, move to that one!
he wasn't going to give in. But then one day, suddenly my husband was ordered to go on a short-term overseas assignment. My husband was a director at his company, and they insisted that they needed someone from upper management in order to set up the new company. At first, he was meant to be there for 6 months, but my husband promised me.
It's a request from the CEO himself, and I need to take responsibility, so I can't say no. But I promise I'll be back within 3 months.
He tried to reassure me, but it was all happening so fast that my mind went blank. Of course I knew that my husband was right, but I also believed him and agreed. Plus, it was validation of just how important my husband was in his company. So I was just happy for him and happy to know that he was doing well. After that, even I started looking for different houses and suggesting them to my mother-in-law. Every single one was shut down. And then when my husband finally departed on his assignment, my mother-in-law's blatant harassment started.
I'm going to gather my friends today for a tea party, so you need to go buy some expensive sweets and teas.
Even though she had never hosted any kind of tea party before, and it was a ridiculous request, I didn't want to make things any more difficult than they already were living alone with her, so I decided to just do as she pleased. Then please, give me your budget.
Oh, I'll pay you back later, so just pay it for me for now.
Wait, you want me to pay?
Who else is there?
Yes, but that's gonna cost quite a bit, so...
I told you I would pay you back later, didn't I? Or are you trying to suggest that you think I won't pay you back?
My mother-in-law flipped a switch and was yelling at me. Yes, ma'am. So my mother-in-law forced me to go buy a large amount of expensive sweets and teas, and invited about 5 friends over as they made a mess of the whole house. Not only that,
this little birdie makes my son work all by himself, and she just lazes about at home all day. So please feel free to use her and make her work, she said.
Her friends jumped right on that boat.
You're only able to have this good life because of your mother-in-law's son. You should be grateful. Go on, hurry and bring us some tea.
They ordered me around as if they were my mother-in-law, and after making quite the mess, they finally went home. But...
Well then, hurry up. Clean up this mess, okay?
What? That's impossible! From now until 9 p.m., I was called into a shift at work.
Excuse me, that's none of my business. Whether you work or not is up to you, isn't it? It's a woman's duty to take care of the house. And you're ugly as is. This is the least that you should be able to do.
But you're the one that asked to host a tea party.
Oh, is that so? Well then, you can just leave it as is. I don't mind at all,
she says as she stormed to her room and closed the door. I personally hated living in a messy house, so in the end, when I got home from my shift, I had to clean it all up. Even after that, my mother-in-law would frequently dirty the house and then call me over.
Hurry up and clean this up, will you?
If I didn't clean it, then she really would leave it as is, and the house only continued to get dirtier and dirtier. And then I wouldn't be able to stand it, and in the end, I would have to clean it up. It was an endless cycle. I was starting to get overwhelmed with stress living with her. So I thought about discussing it with my husband, but then I found out from a friend who works as an administrative assistant at my husband's company that he was working around the clock with an extremely intense schedule, just so that he could really come back in 3 months.
You know, your husband is probably the only one in the company that could do that. He truly is brilliant. I'm jealous.
Knowing that my husband was working that hard for me, I didn't want to put any more stress on his shoulders, so I decided to do my best to tolerate it for 3 months until he could come back. Until one day my mother-in-law went out for tea with one of her friends, and there she must have heard something as she came storming back into the house.
Sheesh, because he married a pig like you, my son's life is a disaster. What have you done to him?
She yelled at me out of nowhere. Of course I had no idea what she was talking about, so I was confused. What do you mean?
I heard from the landlord's wife that her daughter actually liked my son and wanted to marry him. And their daughter not only is beautiful, up until recently she was studying abroad for her degree and is very worthy. Plus, if he had married the landlord's daughter, we could have been rich. But because he married an ugly pig like you should do us all a favor and die.
This was too much, and I was at a loss for words. Up until now, my mother-in-law often called me ugly among other hurtful words, but it was the first time she expressed death wish upon me. After that, as if it to cure my curse, every day she would say,
"You should just die already. If you die, then my son could start over with his life."
Every time I would see her, she would continue to say this to me. Ugly pig, die. Those words were all I would hear at home, and I was falling into a depression. But in a short time that I would be able to talk to my husband, I could tell how much he cared for me, and I was able to tolerate it. Finally, my husband's assignment had finished, and he was going to come home. I was so excited, and I wanted to make all of my husband's favorite dishes, so I went to the grocery store. As I was walking back and crossing the road, I felt someone push me strongly from behind. A car was speeding towards me, and I heard a high-pitched screech of tires that I had never heard before. But after that, my memory was blank. The next time I opened my eyes, my husband was there. Honey?
Amy! Are you awake?
That was an accident.
Oh, thank goodness! Thank goodness!
Somebody pushed me from behind and...
Yes, you don't need to think about that right now. You haven't opened your eyes for 2 weeks.
Really? I tried to go through my memory, and I remembered that I got into an accident the day my husband was supposed to return. My husband immediately called the doctors, and the nurses started to explain everything to me. But then the doctor said,
About that thing, do you want to tell her as her husband?
My husband looked down as he nodded his head. Once I was fully conscious, my husband slowly started to talk.
I have to tell you something that might cause a shock. But to tell you the truth, the person who pushed you from behind was my mother.
What? It was her?
Yeah.
How did you know? Did she say that herself?
No, you were unconscious the whole time. But you kept muttering in your sleep that my mom was going to kill you. That she keeps telling you to die and calling out for help.
It's true that I was suffering from my mother-in-law's harassment, and she would often come after me in my dreams too. On top of that, there was a witness to the accident, and the people came forth saying they saw her push me. When she was questioned by the police, apparently she snapped back.
It's all that pig's fault that my son's married life is a disaster. That's why if I just take care of her, my son could finally be happy. This is all her fault.
She admitted to it in her tantrum, as she was pinned down and taken to the police.
I'm so sorry. I had no idea.
I had decided for myself that I would tolerate it until you came back. You were working so hard for me that I didn't want to burden you anymore.
There's no way you would ever be a burden. But I'm just so glad that you're okay now. Because if not, I never would have forgiven my mom. Actually, I still can't forgive her. And I'm planning on cutting all ties with her.
Hearing my husband say this, I was relieved from the bottom of my heart. And just as he declared, my husband did cut off all ties with his mother. As for my mother-in-law, she was found guilty of attempted murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Given her age, I can only imagine she'll be spending the final years of her life behind bars. While I was hospitalized, I was surprised to find out that my mother-in-law was already arrested. But to be honest, I was relieved. I acted surprised when my husband told me, but I actually knew that it was my mother-in-law the moment that it happened. That's because at the same time as I felt the hands on my back, I heard her mutter, "Die," under her breath. She won't be coming out from prison for the rest of her life, but I think it's a fitting punishment for her. My name is Michelle. Ever since I was little, I had an introverted personality, and I didn't have many friends. However, when I became a freshman in high school, I finally found someone that I could call my best friend. That person was my classmate named Hannah, and she was a complete opposite of me, outgoing and beautiful. When we were freshmen, we were both chosen to be part of an executive committee for the school festival, and that's how we became friends. Time flew by, and we were in our second year of college. One day, when I was talking to Hannah and a few other girls, I overheard them talking about the beauty pageant that would be held at the college festival in 2 months. At the time, suddenly, Hannah made a suggestion to me.
Hey, Michelle, why don't you try joining the beauty pageant with me?
No way! Even if I were to participate, I would just be there laughing stock in the crowd.
Don't worry, anybody that makes fun of you, I'll beat them up myself.
In the beginning, I kept saying no over and over again, but Hannah was so persistent that I eventually gave in, under the condition that I would just do it just this once and one time only. I entered the beauty pageant for that year. From there wasn't much time to prepare, but I wanted to give myself a chance, so I fixed my sleeping schedule and dove headfirst into learning how to do my hair and makeup. To make sure that I wouldn't get too nervous or mess up in my self-introduction, I asked for my parents' help, and I practiced my speech in front of them every single day. On top of that, I went running for an hour every single morning, as well as working throughout the week, and my body was looking slightly better than before. About 1 week before the competition at the school festival, I just so happened to come across Hannah, talking to those same girls from before. Looks like Michelle is really putting in effort. She was so excited to tell me that she lost 2 pounds.
What an idiot. Going on a diet doesn't make you any less ugly.
That's brutal. When you're the only one that invited her to the pageant.
Obviously, that was just to make myself look better in the competition.
I was shocked. I thought Hannah was my best friend, but I guess that's not how Hannah felt at all. If it was the old me, I would have been devastated and probably would have withdrawn my participation from the pageant. But at the time, all I wanted to do was get my revenge on Hannah. It was a short period of 2 months, but maybe all of the effort I had put up until now also helped me build my confidence and pride. That day, I walked out of the house and gave my working older sister a phone call. My sister is currently on maternity leave, but she was a top stylist that has done hair and makeup for famous idols on TV. Hey, I want to become pretty. Finally, you want to put some effort into your appearance. All right, you can leave it all to your big sister. The next day, my sister made a long trip back home from the city, and in a short time left until the pageant. She devoted everything into teaching me all about how to do my makeup. I can't go into the dressing room on the day of, so if your makeup gets all messed up, you have to fix it yourself, all right? Yeah, I got this. You taught me everything. So I know I can do this on my own. The old Michelle would have told me you can't and given up straight away. Michelle, you've changed in a good way. To be honest, what happened with Hannah really devastated me. But at that time, I was too excited to be sad. It was a feeling I had never felt before. Is this what it likes to feel invincible? Now, I can be serious about trying to win. It may have been a fake sense of confidence, but at that time, I was able to convince myself of this. So the day of the school festival, I struggled to put my dress on since I wasn't used to wearing them, so I got a little bit delayed and was the last participant to enter the dressing room. The moment I walked in, everyone, including the event staff, turned their head towards me.
Beautiful! There's no way I can win now!
Well, I think our winner this year is already decided.
Of course, most of this was thanks to the help of my sister and my parents. I can't deny it made me happy. In my whole entire life, I had never been complimented like that before. I saw Hannah in the corner gritting her teeth and turning red as she glared at me across the dressing room. I did feel something like a superiority complex, but at the time, it really was a complicated feeling. After that, the pageant program carried on, one after another, and finally it came time for the final PR opportunity. I gripped onto my script for the speech that I had thought of late at night. So I was waiting backstage for my turn. No matter what, I couldn't get distracted. And the only thing important was to get through this final round. 5 minutes until it was going to be my turn, I needed to take deep breaths and calm my nerves. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath in, and at that moment, I felt something hit me in the head and the body. Right after I finished my breath, I finally realized that my entire body was drenched. Hannah had taken a bucket of water and thrown it onto me.
Oh, poor you! Your beautiful dress is soaked. Your makeup is messed up too. I guess there's no way you can win now.
My sister had taught me a lot of tips for makeup, but I only had less than a week of practice, and I was still an amateur. Even if I tried to fix my makeup now, I wouldn't be able to finish it in time for my turn. I could ask them to skip me and put me at the end, but I'm sure the results would be the same.
What do you want to do? We can ask them to change your turn to be last.
No, it's all right. I can go out like this.
Are you stupid? An ugly face like yours doesn't stand a chance with no makeup.
I didn't bat an eye to Hannah's words as I quickly changed into my normal clothes and got up just in time for the platform. If I went out like this, I am sure I would be a laughingstock in front of the crowd. But I didn't care about any of that, more than something so trivial. I didn't want to put all of my hard work up until now to waste. That determination must have been translated to the crowd. When I first got on stage, there was a quiet buzz, but as soon as I stood on the platform and made my introduction, that quickly turned into a warm applause. This is the real me. I know, as you can see, I'm a classic nerd. The audience lit up in a cheerful giggle, and I knew I had them in my hand. The reason I could stand up here today is thanks to the support of my sister and my parents. But that's not showing my hard work. So now, at the very end, I decided to stand up here and show you all real, honest, pure me. Of course, there was a small part of it that was just a desperate cover-up, but I wasn't lying. Thanks to the support and encouragement from my family, I finally had the courage to stand in front of people and show them me, just as I am. When I finished my speech and put the mic down, the venue erupted into a large applause. This sound, this applause, was all directed for none other than me. In the end, I missed out on the first place overall. I was able to receive the next honor of the top award for my class. Even if you take away the fact that she was disqualified for dumping water on me, it was still a much more honorable result than Hannah. But, well, it seems like Hannah still hasn't been able to accept those results for herself.
The only reason why you were able to get first place out of the sophomore class was because I got disqualified. Don't get this all twisted.
Don't you think the reason you couldn't get the award is because of your twisted personality, including the disqualification? I think it's a very fitting result.
Excuse me? You were just selected out of pity. Who do you think you are, you ugly, shy loser? Don't get carried away.
As the two of us were going back and forth, those girls that were talking trash with Hannah that day came running over. That being said, those girls were just going along with Hannah, and it's not like I had any particular feelings towards them. But then suddenly, one of the girls grabbed my hand and with sparkling eyes started talking to me.
I was so touched by your speech. It's a shame they didn't select you for overall first place, but to me, you were the winner of this whole event, Michelle.
As she spoke to me, tears started streaming down her face. Apparently, she was too insecure about her own looks too, and later told me that my speech gave her a lot of confidence. Hannah may have a lot of friends, but it was clear that they were all just tools to make her look better, nothing more. Even then, Hannah's entourage could only stay quiet and laugh along with whatever she said. Those girls must all be like the old me.
Hey, why are you taking Michelle's side?
You're my friend. When I heard Michelle's speech, it made me think that real friends try to understand each other's insecurities and compliment them to be more confident. But you're not like that, are you, Hannah? To you, we're just accessories that you can adorn yourself with.
I think so too. This whole time, I thought you were my best friend, but as of today, I quit.
Wait a minute! Where are you going? Hey!
And just like that, Hannah lost all of her popularity and friendships that she had built in one day. Girls can be pretty harsh, and I can only imagine the following days were hell for her. What she said and did at the pageant spread around the whole college, and I'm sure there's no way she could make new friends if she tried. Hannah must have been exhausted of her lonely life, and before we started our junior year, she withdrew from college. Even still, I am a little bit grateful to Hannah, because the only reason I was able to gain all of these friends and change enough to be confident in myself was because of Hannah's evil plan. That being said, I have no intention of repairing any sort of relationship with Hannah, though.
My name is John. I live with my wife Mary and my daughter Nicole, and we're a happy family of 3. My daughter and I are not biologically related, but we keep that a secret from her. My daughter's real father is the man that my wife cheated on me with in the past. My wife was always the self-centered and selfish type, but she was beautiful and pure, and I fell for her, so we got married. However, in our 2nd year of marriage, when I was away on a long business trip, I found out that my wife was cheating on me. By the time I realized, she was already pregnant with that man's child. And when he found out, he disappeared. My wife came crying to me and apologizing, asking me to raise the child with her. Of course, at first, I told her she couldn't just have it her way and said no and also consider divorce. However, my wife became unable to eat, and her health took an extreme turn for the worse.
I can't live without you,
She said, and I wasn't able to leave my wife alone, and she was drowning herself in tears every day. And in the end, I forgave her. After she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, with the slightest bit of hope, I requested a DNA test just in case. But it turns out that she really wasn't my child. That being said, none of this was my daughter's fault, so I tried to tell myself over and over again to forget that we were not related by blood. When Nicole was born, things truly felt like a real family, and life was happy again. As long as I was there, I vowed to love her as though she was my own daughter. And I did everything I could to help my wife with raising our precious daughter. We didn't want to hurt our daughter either, so we decided as a couple that it would be best not to tell her the truth. I hoped that we would live as a happy family of 3 forever, but unfortunately, that didn't last long. When my daughter was in her last year of middle school, my wife cheated on me once again. This time it was with her classmate from high school, with whom she had gotten back in touch with at her high school reunion. Much to my dismay, he was the one that contacted me himself, and that was how I found out. When he called, he suddenly said,
I want you to get a divorce from Mary.
so I confronted my wife, and she didn't try to deny the affair. On top of that, my wife told me that she wanted me to get out of the house. She said that she wanted to live with her new boyfriend and our daughter in this house. But of course, there was no way I was going to give a full-time housewife full rights to the house. Plus, if we were getting a divorce because of her adultery, it was obvious that she would be at a disadvantage. Even then, my wife refused to apologize or back down, and I was over it. Since we had a daughter who was still in middle school, we couldn't push forward with a divorce, and time kept passing by. Around that time, my daughter started acting strangely. Up until then, she was really attached to me, and we had never gotten into any fights or arguments before. I thought we had a great relationship, but one day, she started avoiding me. At first, I thought maybe she was going through puberty and hitting a rebellious phase, but eventually she started verbally harassing me.
Nicole, go get in the shower.
Wasn't that guy in the shower earlier?
That guy? Oh, you mean your dad? Yeah, he already finished taking a shower.
Ew! I can't get in the same shower as him. That's disgusting.
Come on, just go in.
I'm going to take a quick rinse then.
I can hear you, you know.
What? Eavesdropping? Ugh, that's so creepy of you. You're the worst scumbag, old man.
What's with that mouth of yours lately?
Shut up. It's none of your business.
My daughter slammed the living room door shut and stormed out. Leaving me at home with my daughter like this, my wife would sneak out at night from the house and come home in the morning. By this time, that happy family of 3 had already come crashing down and turned to dust. My daughter's word became more and more harsh as the days went by, and I could feel the stress piling up inside of me. Then one day, it became clear that the reason for my daughter's behavior was because my wife was brainwashing her. When I came home early from work that day, I could hear my wife and my daughter speaking in the living room.
I can't do this anymore. How much longer is the old man going to be in this house?
Who knows? I can't believe he can act so normal when he's having an affair.
You should hurry up and divorce that guy. I can't believe he would cheat on you with a young woman after all that you've done for him, Mom. I hate him.
That guy is the worst kind of father who would betray his own family. Let's hurry up and kick him out so that we can live in peace together.
Yeah, let's get him out of here already. I can't let you keep getting hurt like this, Mom.
What are you guys talking about?
Honey?
When did I ever cheat on you? You're the one that's been cheating all this time. You've been lying to Nicole and brainwashing her.
I haven't brainwashed her. Nicole, don't be fooled by your father's lies.
I know. I've already heard everything from Mom. You're a giant liar. Hurry up and get out.
I'm not lying. Nicole, open your eyes. You know that your dad would never lie or do anything to hurt you.
You're disgusting. Don't touch me. Why don't you just go off on your little girlfriend's place already?
Nicole!
I don't want to see your face ever again.
No matter how much I tried to clear up the misunderstanding, my daughter wouldn't listen to a word. Not only that, but she kept insisting that I was a liar, and our relationship got even worse. I had raised her with all my love as if she were my own daughter. But since my wife was always at home with her as a full-time housewife while I was at work, she got to spend more time with Nicole and had brainwashed her. And I was devastated. Even if my wife were to continue with her affair, I wanted to at least take responsibility as a father and help raise my daughter until she graduated high school. But around this time, I started prepping for a divorce at any moment. The deciding factor came one day when my wife had left the house and I was home alone with my daughter. It was my day off of work and I was relaxing in the living room when my daughter came home. Welcome back.
Why are you here? When are you going to leave us alone?
I'm not going anywhere.
Huh? Hurry up and get out and just pay child support fees. It's embarrassing to have a disgusting old man like you as my father.
Don't say anymore.
I don't think of you as my dad at all. Anyone who would cheat is the same as trash. Hurry up and get lost.
At that moment, I had reached my limit and snapped. Fine, that's enough. I'm not your father anyway.
What are you saying?
I had planned on exposing everything at the time of the divorce, and I had prepared something in advance. Look at this.
A DNA test?
It took some time for my daughter to understand that she and I were not biologically related. With the DNA test results in her hand, Nicole fell silent and stared at the paper as I slowly revealed the truth to her. I told her that she may be the daughter of my wife and her affair, but that to me, she was my daughter, whom I loved unconditionally as though she were my own. Nicole's eyes welled up as tears started streaming down her face. Seeing my daughter sobbing and apologizing to me through her tears made my heart hurt.
Not even your real daughter, and still, you raised me. I didn't know.
But the love I have for you as my daughter is real. And I think of you as my only daughter. Every human makes mistakes.
Dad,
But I've reached my limit, so I'm gonna leave now.
I don't want that. I promise I won't yell at you anymore. I want to be best friends, just like we used to be.
It's already too late.
How could you say that? Dad, I'm so sorry. Please, forgive me.
I'm home. What happened? Nicole, why are you crying?
Mom, you lied to me, you liar.
What on earth is going on?
I explained everything to my wife from start to finish and served her the divorce papers. After the initial shock, my wife turned livid for telling my daughter the truth about our relationship. I ignored her and let her ran on her own as I gathered my belongings and put the house behind me. I never went back to that house again. After that, the divorce was finalized, and I began my new life living in a one-bedroom apartment. Of course, it's not like my love or responsibility towards my daughter had disappeared. So after the divorce up until she graduated high school, I transferred child support fees every month for her. My daughter sent me multiple messages, expressing her guilt and regret. But all I could think about was all the awful things she had said to me for so long. At the same time, I would get flashbacks to when my daughter was still a sweet little girl. About 3 years after the divorce, I got a message from my daughter that she got a job, and that she was also going to move out of the house and start living alone. After that day when I left my old house, I hadn't seen my daughter once. But I wanted to congratulate her for getting a job. We decided to go to dinner together. It was my first time seeing her in 3 years. The moment we reunited, my daughter broke down in tears and couldn't stop crying. Immediately after the divorce, my daughter realized she was being brainwashed by my ex-wife, and she lived in misery, dealing with her guilt and regret while having to be around her cheating mother. But after that day, my daughter and I started to meet up more frequently for dinner, and we started to slowly rebuild our relationship. As for my ex-wife, she got remarried to the man that she cheated on me with, but then he dumped all of his debt onto her and ran away. When that happened, she came to me for help, but of course I refused. My wife became hysterical and started calling me every single day and spewing hate towards me. Until then, I hadn't collected a settlement fee from her for her affair, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And 3 years later, I sued my wife for adultery. After that, she never called me again. Thanks to that settlement money, I was able to take my daughter on vacations, and we created more happy memories together. That's why I decided to let go of any resentment from the past, look towards a brighter future for myself and my daughter.
My name is Sarah. I work at a company in the sales department, and it's been 5 years since I started working there. I started to get more responsibilities, and every day is fairly busy. What I looked forward to the most every single day was to eat my favorite sweets. Whenever I hear information that a cake shop has a new product, I always buy it on my way home from work as a gift to myself. And since I take a lunchbox to work, and therefore saving a lunch cost, I always buy a small dessert from the convenience store to have after my lunch. This was my daily routine. I used to go straight to the convenience store after I finished eating my lunch to get my dessert. But the shop gets busy during lunchtime, so I couldn't really take my time to choose what I wanted. That's why I started leaving the house a little bit earlier in the mornings and would stop by various shops on the way to buy some sweets and leave them in the company refrigerator. However, one day, the dessert that I had left in the fridge was gone. That's strange. I definitely wrote my name on it, didn't I? Because all the employees use that company refrigerator, there's a marker to make sure everybody writes their own names on their belongings. I thought maybe there's a chance I forgot to write my name on them this morning. Of course, just because I didn't write my name on it doesn't make it okay for somebody else to eat it. But I thought maybe I was partially to blame as well, and I let it go that day. However, the next day when I finished eating my lunch and went into the refrigerator, my dessert once again was gone. I definitely know that I wrote my name on it today. I guess that must mean that somebody's eating it. I wanted to figure it out, but since I'm in the sales department, I often have work outside of the office. Plus, even in the office, it's not like I'm always sitting at my desk and everybody uses the fridge. So it wouldn't be possible for me to sit there and observe it all day. I was really bothered by it. Work was busy, so I just decided to stop buying my sweets on the way to work in the mornings. A little while after that, on another day, I had an important meeting with a client that day, so I went to a popular cake shop and lined up 1 hour before the shop opened just so that I could buy their most popular item, the cream puff, and I placed it in the company fridge to take later. Before it was time for me to head out, I went around the other departments to double check the contents of the meeting, and when it came to leave, I went to the refrigerator to open it up to find out that the cream puff was gone. What? Are you kidding me? Why? It's one thing to take my personal desserts, but I couldn't believe that the gift I had prepared for a client had also been taken, and I was irritated. Hey, does anyone know where the cream puff that was in the fridge was? I left it in there because I was going to take it to a client for a meeting.
What? I don't know anything about it, but isn't that bad? That means that someone took it, right?
I don't know, but what do I do? The person in charge at our client's company, Mr. Smith, was the one who told me about the cream puff and how popular it was. He said he wanted to try it at least once. That's why I went so early in the morning and lined up for it. Then my colleague said,
I actually have a small connection to that shop. Do you want me to try contacting them?
What? Really?
Yeah.
She immediately reached out.
Seems like they have a fresh batch that they haven't put out into the shop yet. So they said they'll just set a few aside as a favor for us.
Thank you.
You owe me.
My colleague saved me, and somehow I was able to get the cream puff in time as a gift for a client. They were thrilled, and it was a great impression, and I was able to have a successful first meeting with them. Oh, thank goodness. But who is it? Who could it be that's stealing my stuff? If it's just my own personal things, then all it does is irritate me. But this This was a close call for work, and it can't happen again. And one of my colleagues came up to me. Hey, apparently someone saw Karen walking outside with a box from the cake shop with the cream puffs that you were talking about. Seriously? Well, I didn't see it myself, so I can't be too sure. But there was one box of cream puffs in the fridge, right? So that must mean that Karen might have taken it. As soon as I heard that, I rushed over to Karen's desk, but...
Excuse me? I went to buy that cream puff myself. Can you stop accusing me without any proof?
But they said that you took it out of the department.
So what? Is there some law that states I can't bring something I bought for myself into the company?
Karen got defensive and refused to admit anything. I know you're lying. That cream puff is so popular that you have to line up in the shop hours before. There's no way that you could have gotten it so easily.
I had my friend wait in line for me. Anyway, can you stop blaming me? Just because your ratings are lower than mine, you're just trying to bring me down, aren't you? How pathetic. Trying to blame others for being bad at your job.
From what I heard from another colleague, apparently Karen took my cream puffs and went out of her way to brag that she lined up for them herself, and she was favored by the clients. And that's how she was getting so many contacts signed so quickly. I could barely contain my frustration. Regardless of this cream puff incident, if Karen was the one taking my other desserts too, I figured that the same thing would probably happen again. That's why I waited for the perfect time, and I decided to put a certain plan into action against her. Karen was approaching having a big contract being signed, and she was in a great mood, so I decided to play my plan. Because the contract was set, Karen was in high spirits and said to me,
Huh, I guess this will create an even bigger gap between us, won't it? Why don't you try a little harder? Although maybe there's no point. Yeah, ha ha ha.
She was laughing, in line with her contract signing date. I went to a separate cake shop and made a bit of a ridiculous request and had them made a special custom dessert. That morning, I went to pick it up at the special dessert and left it in the fridge. I had sales meetings, so I was out of the office from morning until 4 p.m. in the afternoon, but when I got back, I've just arrived back. As soon as I walked into the office, Karen stormed me and started grabbing me by the collar.
You! What have you done to me? Because of you, my contract is a disaster!
In my head, I confirmed that it was indeed Karen that was taking my desserts every time, but I played along. Huh? What are you talking about? What on earth are you saying I did?
You put a massive amount of wasabi and horseradish into the cream puffs in the fridge, didn't you? The client ate that and he was furious and we got major complaints.
That's right. The custom dessert that I requested was for them to fill half of the cream puff with wasabi and horseradish, because I was expecting this exactly to happen. What? Those cream puffs in the fridge, I bought them because I wanted to play Russian roulette game with my colleagues later. So why are you taking those to a client? This must have brought Karen back down to earth because her face turned completely pale and full of regret. I knew it. So you were the one taking my desserts as well as the cream puffs that I was going to take to my client. It was all you, wasn't it?
No, you're wrong. I just made a little mistake.
Interesting. What did you mistake it for? Where are the desserts that you were originally planning to take? Where in the fridge are those?
Shut up! I don't have time for this right now. If we can't recover from this and get the contract signed because of you, you better take responsibility.
Why should I?
You better!
As Karen was howling about, our boss, who had already heard what happened, arrived with flames in his eyes.
I heard that you brought a box of cream puffs with wasabi and horseradish as a prank to our client. Is that true?
It wasn't a prank. That woman tried to set up a trap for me.
I don't know what she's talking about. I would never do such a thing. I had made a custom order at a cake shop in order to play a game with my colleagues later. And Miss Karen stole the box without any permission and used it herself. Here's a proof that we were just trying to play a game amongst ourselves. So to my boss and to my colleagues, I showed them the group chat messages that we were talking about playing the Russian roulette game. Seeing this...
So, because you stole your colleagues' belongings without any permission, and that's why this contract was destroyed!
Our boss was furious as her face was bright red, and she looked like she was about to cry.
But it wasn't my fault!
She kept trying to say, but I'm sure that wouldn't change anything. She got what she deserved. After that, it came to light that Karen had been stealing my things and taking them to other clients, and combined with the cream puff incident, she was fired. the company demanded that she pays me back for all of the things that she had taken from me. And, almost like a cost of damages, she had to pay me money. When met with punishment, Karen continued,
This is all your fault!
She kept repeating this as she packed up her desk, but it was really all her own doing. The rumors about Karen had spread throughout the company already, and I'm sure people heard about it from the client victim too. So it would probably be impossible for her to find a new job in the same industry. I don't have an ounce of sympathy anywhere for her though.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.